Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to tackle America when it comes to the cheese stuff, and my god, does America have a lot of premiums. So this may take a while, and probably a reason why this video is out a little bit later than maybe it should be. Starting off from rank 1, you have Gala's F3F2, Thatcher's F2A1, and also the B10B. So Gala's is just a copy of the F3F2. It's the general starter premium. It's not a bad idea, but the thing about rank 1 America is you have so many different planes, and if you play in like arcade, you can have a lot of fun with it, and then once you get to rank 2, like the 2.7s and 2.3s, 2.0s, stuff like that, you could probably transition into realistic if you wanted to, but I think it's worth just playing through this tech tree. There's a few duds here and there, like the OS2Us, but you only lock them if you play some Naval. The bombers aren't the best, if I'm honest with you, and same with like the kind of lighter bombers, they're not very good either, but these ones are alright, especially when it comes to arcade. So stuff like Gala's or Thatcher's is probably not required. The B10B is a little bit unique though. It has the wonderful pre-war colors and has, of course, 3 7.62mm guns in some interesting areas. It also gets 2 1,000-pound bombs on it, so it can even carry a 2,000-pound bomb. So to try and shock people, you can actually use this in like ground and start bombing people with ridiculous tonnage. Very similar to the Catalinas in that way. It's just got much better flight characteristics than the Catalinas, which can be pretty fun. So that's at least something to look out for if you don't mind having a bit of fun with some lower tier stuff. The Key 43 too is a standard, you know, Japanese plane. It has access to the two 12.7 HO 103s, which isn't really good enough to do a ton of damage. The vehicle flight characteristics are fantastic. It's one of the easiest planes in the game to use. It's incredibly mobile and incredibly easy to use, but it's just not really a vehicle that's very powerful in that way. So I think it's fine. It's a good vehicle. It's just not something that's going to take the world by storm. I think there are a lot of better vehicles in the tech tree than it, and as a vehicle, it's a fantastic defensively flyer. It's very easy to get in a position to kill people. It's just the guns can let you down. The Key 61B is also another vehicle which is completely fine as a vehicle, you know, for HO 103, so a little bit more damage this time, has a better engine, has better flight performance over the Key 43. Overall, a good one, but you are spoilt for choices when it comes to America at these BRs. Why bother with a Japanese aircraft that you can grind out in another tree? Why not just play the just mountainous amounts of these rank 3 or rank 2 American vehicles that are all incredibly fun, especially since these two don't have crazy bonuses on them. Then you have the XP55, which is a very unique vehicle and took the longest time to actually go up in BR. It's been really good for the longest time and still is good, by the way. 212.7s, 220s is a very good setup. It even has, you know, good flight performance and also can be a little bit dodgy to shoot because obviously it's kind of a backwards aircraft, so can be hard to line up. It doesn't have any secondaries, so it's very much an air arcade, air realistic machine. But with the firepower it has, the maneuverability, and mainly the speed that this thing has, it can be really powerful. So definitely worth giving a look at. It is really expensive though for what it is, but it is incredibly fun. Then you got the A6M2, another Japanese vehicle that's probably one of the best in the game at defensively flying and being able to turn an engagement, at least as a propeller aircraft. Really fun. Flies really well. You know, if you're a fan of Japanese stuff, I would advise just to go play the Japanese tree, but if you really like this one, then obviously it's available for you. And it's once again at that BR though, where there's just a ton of other really good American vehicles, there's not really much point. Then you have the BF-109 F4, so this one is just a standard F4, apart from you don't get access to the secondary weapons, so you only get the 20mm and the 7.92, which is a lot of people's choice for a BF-109 and, you know, its general killing power. A lot of people don't run the gun pods because they prefer the mobility or maneuverability of the vehicle. So overall, it's not a bad pick. It's just, once again, There's so many offerings for America at these BRs, and they just keep getting lowered over and over again, that it kind of makes sense just to play them. The XP50 is insanely good. It climbs probably better than anything else that's around. Also has an interesting olive green camo, which is quite nice, but it has a really good rate of climb, puts you in a position to be able to dominate the match, and has 220mm and 212.7, so it can do a lot of damage afterwards. The only issue you have with this thing is the fact that once it's low, it loses all of its advantages. It can't really defensively fly too well, so you have to pick and choose the correct position to be able to go in and actually fight the enemy. But it's not a bad vehicle, works fantastically well. Highly recommend it. If you haven't played it, at least give it a test flight and see how you feel. It's a rank 3 as well, so you can do all the dailies and specials. Not too good at the whole ground or naval thing, but in air, it's a very powerful vehicle. BTD is one which is also interesting. The cool thing about this one is it can carry 2 torpedoes. So with 2 torpedoes, very useful in naval. It can also carry the AN Mark 1, which is a 1600-pound AP bomb, which is weirdly enough, so you just want to use the 2 1000s instead. You've also got the mines as well if you want to bring them along. So overall, the BTD-1 is a good vehicle on bomb load wise in ground and also in naval. In air, its bomb load isn't very good. It's much more of a supportive fighter in a way. Get your bombs off and then just start trying to twat people with the AM2s that it has, since it has 220s in the wings. It's kind of a lower tier AM1 or an AD2, and it works pretty well. It's just there are better options for that in air, but in ground and naval, I think it's definitely worth a pickup. It's a good choice, that one. Then you got these ones, which are pack vehicles, and then we move on to the Grizzly. So the Grizzly has access to a 75mm M10, which is very similar to the one that you find on the Sherman. This basically means that it can do a decent amount of damage, penning over 104, but being able to hit targets with it is not very good, and also it only has 20 rounds. It does have some backup 50 cals, and then also it has, I believe, 2 turrets. Yeah, so it has 2 turrets here and here, and then of course the guy controlling them here. Overall, like it's a bad vehicle, I think is the way to put it. It's not very fast. Its defenses are okay, but its main reason for existing is this donkey gun. And as we found with many vehicles, the donkey gun is usually not the best. 4.500s is the way to go. And also, of course, 4.250s and 4.100s as well. So you can bring them along and have a decent time, but there are better options at this BR, P47s, P51s, stuff like that, to be able to ground pound with, so it's kind of redundant as a vehicle. Then you have these two, which are bundles as well. The Focke-Wulf or 90A8, don't really think this is worth it at 5.0. The A series kind of peaks at the A5 in my opinion. The A1 and the A4 are okay, but the A5 is pretty good. The A8 is not awesome. There are a lot better vehicles around the BR for air superiority, and this thing doesn't get any secondaries, so it's only really useful in air battles. And yeah, there's just a lot better options. It has a cool skin though, so, you know, at least there's that. You got the Spitfire LF, Mark 9C, the Spacefire as it was known. This one does actually have a bunch of different camos that you can grind out, which is kind of cool. So if you want a bunch of the different American camos, you can kind of get them. So there's that at least, which is quite nice. There's some really beautiful ones. And yeah, it climbs really well. It has the Hispanos, the 7.7s, and also if you want, it can carry a bomb. So you can actually be more useful in ground and naval. The vehicle is very good at defensively flying. It's very good at engaging in turn fights. The only thing that beats it is a bunch of Japanese aircraft. So for me, it's a good pick. You know, it'll get you through most of the American tech tree and you won't even have to worry about it. But at the same time, there's just so much here, which is really fun to play. I would rather just play those and then kind of play the British equivalent in the British tech tree. The A2D1 used to be very good. It still is good. It just requires a bit of a different playstyle because it mostly faces jets nowadays. They also upped its BR ridiculously in arcade because you could basically go to space and and just bomb bases over and over again with a reload. This vehicle has two 2,000 pounders. It also has a bunch of 500s along with it, so it can be useful in ground, and also gets torpedoes, so it can be useful in Naval too. But it's at a bit of a dodgy BR for Naval, because they've finally started adding machines in Naval at 7.0, which do have quite a lot of AA ordnance, so that's not going to be great. Since it faces jets mostly, it's more about survival instead of, you know, trying to dogfight them or anything like that. It's not in a good position to dogfight, but it still can be a decent bomb truck. Then you've got the F-89s. F-89s are criminally under-tiered, and they will stay because of how people play them. They are not turn fighters, they are pretty much energy fighters, and they're faster than pretty much anything that they can face at the tier. You just have to pick and choose when you go into the battles and to be effective in them. They're really good vehicles, and once again, they do have some pretty good camos like this one, the Idaho A&G one, and of course the Tiger Jet as well for the first one. So this one's the kind of expensive one, but it is technically the better one of the two, but you know, they're both pretty good in their own ways. So yeah, it's kind of it's crazy to me that this thing is 7.0. It should be way higher than that. Then you got the F-89D, which is a lot cheaper, but it's also linked to the other one, so you actually have to buy the other one to be able to get access to this one. This vehicle has access to some interesting rockets. So you have these FFAR Mighty Mouse rockets, the M439s. Then you also have the standard Mighty Mouse rockets. So these ones, they have to hit to penetrate and have good penetration on them, so it can be useful in ground. These are good old proximity, so they have 104 rockets to be able to try and snipe people in air. This thing is a terror. At the BR that it's at, as long as you know how to use it, it can be incredibly destructive on taking out people. You just got to be careful about the convergence. The rest of them are packed vehicles, and as you can see, there's a ton of them, so we'll be covering them next week. There's just so many GE vehicles for America. It is absolutely insane. For the ground vehicles, there is a ton of mid-tier ones, but not too many early-tier ones. Like at this tier, you've pretty much just got the M2A4, the first division, which is a fine premium. Like it's a completely okay vehicle, and running with the M2A4 to give yourself a little bit of a boost to the rest of the tech tree, but it's not really needed at the end of the day. Like it's just kind of odd how there's only one rank 1 premium that's available for GE. The rest are like bundle or pack or event vehicles that we've seen over the years. So the next one is the Grant 1. The Grant 1's actually pretty fun. It's one that I bring out for the Page of History events every once in a while, and it has access to the 37 and the 75. The armor at 2.7 actually holds up pretty well, and also, since it has 6 crew, it has pretty good survivability on top of that. The 75 is obviously a bit of a donkey gun because of the fact that it doesn't have a lot of traverse, but if you angle the vehicle properly, then you can do really well with it. The 37 also pens quite a lot for the BR, so it pens up to 87mm, as you can see, with the upgraded round, and of course you have the M61 shot from the 75, which is a fantastic round to have at this BR. So for me, I think the Grant is actually pretty fun. I don't think it's the best vehicle, but I've had a good time in it as of lately. The M4A5 is, of course, the good old Canadian vehicle. This one is the Ram. It has the 57mm, the 6-pounder on it. It also has some 30 cals in it and has some very wonky armor, meaning that some people can just completely screw up where to shoot this thing. The 6-pounder is fine, you know, it pens a lot, and the post-pen damage is okay. There's a lot of vehicles around this BR that do a lot more post-pen damage, which is kind of sad, but the reload is very good on it. You can, you know, fire out rounds over and over and over again. The general issue I have with this thing is more of its mobility not being the greatest compared to some of the competition that's around, so it takes a while to kind of get to the positions that you want to get to, and then after that it can be a bit rough. It does have a stabilizer on the 6-pounder though, so that's quite nice. You can generally get the first shot off, and yeah, it's not a bad vehicle, it's just not fantastic either. T13, the chunky Sherman. So This one's a tough one. At 4.7, especially nowadays, with 5.3 and 5.7 Germany being pretty strong, and also 5.3 USSR being pretty strong. If you get up tiered, the 75mm doesn't really do too much, and also you don't have a ton of armor like the Jumbo to be able to survive a bunch of shots. So the vehicle itself is very BR dependent on how useful it is. The armor can be really nice, especially this upper glacis. The vehicle used to be absolutely busted when it was at 4.3, but now a lot of things have changed, and it's nowhere near as good at 4.7. It's still completely fine. It's just, once again, it's way more matchmaking dependent than it was before. At least it's labeled as a heavy tank as well, so that means that it will cost more and not get artillery. If it was labeled as a medium tank, maybe it would be a bit more worth it. The Black Cat is worth it though. This one is just a Hellcat, which doesn't have the side skirts or the muzzle brake. It's very fun, incredibly enjoyable vehicle. I've had a wonderful time in this thing, and I run it with one of my event lineups, which is basically the Hellcats, the Black Cats, the M4, and then P51/P47, depending on how I'm feeling that day. And it's really fun. It's got scouting, got artillery, so if you get up tiered, you can still be useful. And, you know, it has the smoke shells that you can use to move around the place. It has the 50 cal to shoot down planes, and it can give you an initial advantage in a game really quickly, and just is fun to use. Like, it is just a fun vehicle to run around with. Then you got the Cobra King, which is just the Jumbo, but in the good old setup. I've actually researched a lot of the skins on this thing and had a really good time with it. You know, it used to be part of one of my standard lineups for doing events. You can see it here along with the M4A3E2. I don't use it as much anymore because stuff like the M18 is a lot more fun, and I just kind of run around and have a good time with it. So the Cobra King is still good. You know, its main competition is obviously Tigers and stuff like that, which can be a problem, but with the APCR you can pen them. Panthers are much more of an issue, but once again, cupolas exist, and, you know, slight angling can work as well. Overall, it can have a pretty decent time. It's still a good vehicle, just not as good as it used to be. T20 is a bit of an odd one. It has the 76mm on it, which is quite nice. It has pretty good mobility, but not really too much else. Like, the mobility on it is pretty quick, as you can see, and it can also reverse pretty well, so you can get a shot off, get back, and then move around. The armor is not very good. The low profile is quite nice on it, I suppose, but it's not really something to write home about. A 76mm with the M62 at 6.0 that can face a lot of heavies. I mean, it's not exactly up there, right? Like, it's in a dodgy spot, is probably the best way to put it. So for me, looking at this vehicle, it's okay. It's just there are better options that are around the place. The Calliope is crazy expensive, but can also be crazy fun. So this vehicle being at 4.0 and having a bunch of the rockets you can overpressure people with is, you know, pretty cool and pretty fun. It's just crazy expensive. So if you want to have a laugh and you want to have fun and, you know, just donk people, it's worth going for. But it's, you know, going to put a hole in your pocket. The T28 is very similar to the T95 that's in the tech tree. This one just obviously isn't as good because of the armor stuff. It has a ton of armor on the front of it, but it does have the cupolas, which even are still armored, but, you know, it can at least push through it. It doesn't have a lot of armor on the sides, and of course it only has the singular tracks and the gun, which a lot of people shoot to basically take out the vehicle. So in the right matchmaking, this thing can just be nuts, but it's a bit too slow for me and easy to get outflanked, and also pretty long reload on the gun. Even though the gun pens really well and usually you one-shot stuff, it takes a lot of time to get to the positions. While you're reloading, a lot of people will just hit your gun and then you're useless for like 30 to 60 seconds, and yeah, it's just a mess, and then you get bombed. So not really worth it in my opinion. Then you got the Super Hellcat. This one's pretty fun. I've had a good time with this one. 90mm M3, which is a very good gun for 6.3. and has also access to the M82 shot, which means that you can go through most things apart from certain heavy tanks like the Tiger 2H in the front. Stuff such as the 10 degrees of gun depression is super nice, and also the general targeting speed is pretty good. The reload rate's not the best, but because of the mobility of the chassis, since it's a Hellcat chassis, you can get forward and get back pretty quickly. So this is a really fun flank and spank tank destroyer. Highly recommend that one for the lineup. The M26 T99 is just the standard Pershing with a bunch of rockets attached to it. The Pershing isn't very good at its BR. It's in a bit of a rough place at the moment, and also is quite slow. Adding the rockets to it gives it at least something that's a little bit fun, but it's not as if these rockets are crazy good, and since around this BR you run into a lot more heavy tanks than you do at the lower BRs where the Calliope is, it's probably going to be worse off in that way. So the overpressure is nice, but not really worth it compared to a lot of other things. So the vehicle's okay, it's just very expensive for what you get out of it. Then you have the, I believe it's the M26 E1, which is on sale. It's either the M26 or the Tiger, or neither. Let's just check real quick. It's the M46 Tiger. So this one's weird because it's at rank 4, even though it's standard tech tree ones in rank 5. And I think this is just back to one of the older systems where the max rank was rank 5 in the game. But this is just a standard M46 Tiger. It has access to the good old M3A1. This has access to the heat shell, so it can pen pretty much anything that it finds. It's got a good profile, you know, and also has a beefy engine along with the transmission to try and get it moving a bit more. The 50 cal is also nice on the top. I think the M46 as a vehicle is very fun once you have it kind of ground out, and the M46 Tiger is it ground out. So for me, that's a powerful thing, you know, that's a very positive thing at the end of the day. So I'd say this one's pretty good. Definitely worth it if you're looking to like run something with either the CEV or even the good old T29 if you have that vehicle. T114 is a bit of fun as well. It's just a little box with a recoilless rifle on it. Has scouting, has artillery, so you can hide it in places and just donk people. The reload on the gun is very good, but you only have a first stage ammo storage of 3, and then it has to be reloaded. So the survivability is low, only 2 people in it. You can get machine gunned to death, but you can hide this thing in funny corners and then just scout people and shoot anybody who gets close. Planes will just eat you alive, but since you're quite a small profile, it's pretty easy to stay low and not get attacked or anything like that. So generally it's pretty good for that stuff, and pretty enjoyable to use. Then you have the T54E1. This one, I mean, I can see its perks, and I've seen it do pretty well, but also one of the big things against this thing is you already have a powerhouse ATO lineup. The Sheridan, the Bradley, the AOS, the T95E1, the M60A2. And that's not even adding anything else in. Like, that's just a nuts lineup right there. And adding this in as a vehicle, I mean, you can do, I suppose, but the 105, I suppose, is good. You know, the reload on it's really good, but do you need it? Probably not. And if you want to grind stuff out, there's probably better options like the XM1 or, you know, maybe even the T114. So as a vehicle, you know, it's got a decent gun. It's got the oscillating turret with the double armor on it, which is quite good. And it will stop a lot of rounds, which will be nice. And it also looks pretty cool. I can't wait to see the other T54s in the game at some point. And it has the heat at a 5-second reload, or the Sabo or the AP, depending on what you want to use, and you'll do pretty well with it. I just don't think it's required because of the simple fact that you have such a really good lineup already on top of the 8.0 lineup, and also they're rank 6, so they're better at researching, you know, the latest stuff that exists. The other one's the Wolfpack, but that's not on offer because, of course, it is too young to the game. For Naval, you have a ton of options for America, and they're all pretty good. There isn't really any which are bad. The Wellborn is just another Clemson class. There's not really much point in picking this up. The Litchfield and the Barker are not very good vehicles, but once you get past them, you get into some of the best destroyers in the game. So just suffer through these, get to the Alwyn, and then get to the Sumner, the Fletcher, and the Mitcher, and you'll have a really, really good time. So just don't worry about this setup. The Wilkinson is a Mitcher class, and this one is one of the banes of my existence. So it has this fire director, which basically means that it calculates at 6 seconds and fire solution on 3 seconds. This is a lot faster than pretty much every other vehicle at this BR, apart from some of the Soviet vehicles at 5.0. And with these two 127mm guns, which are here, they can just keep outputting damage over and over again. You can see the fire rate there, 40 rounds a minute, and that is on the ready use, and then the fire rate after that is 27 rounds a minute, which is just nuts. It also has 2 dual sets of 3-inch guns, which have access to HEVT, so good luck getting near it with planes. This thing also has all the different shells you would want, and is just so annoying when it just starts opening up on you, because you get hit, then you get hit, then you get hit, and you just can't stop the damage coming in, and it's very hard to deal with it. The Frank Knox is a gearing class. It's very similar to the USS gearing. They added it more recently. It's another one of the pretty good American destroyer premiums. Not as good as the Moffett, but still okay. You know, it has the 5-inch guns, which are pretty bog standard for America. They are the best destroyer guns in the game, with the really good fire rate and also just a metric ton of them. Also has, you know, decent secondaries and also torpedoes. Overall, it's just a good machine. There's nothing to really complain about with it. It's also rank 3, so you can do dailies and specials with it, which is quite nice. Then you got the Moffett. The Moffett's definitely the one to go for. It's just a Porter class, and it has access to 4 sets of dual 5-inch guns. So we talked about before, these guns are incredibly good. You can, once you've sorted out, you know, the ranging on an enemy, you can just constantly do damage to them over and over and over again. You can see the fire director. This is a lot more standard compared to what the other machine is, but yeah, this one is really nice. It has some Chicago typewriters on it, and then also some 20mm and some torpedoes. So you can use it in a slightly different way, but it's the guns which really make this thing the thing that it is. It also has really high SL rewards, so if you want to print SL, this is definitely the way to go. The other one that prints SL is the Helena, and the Helena also can research the whole of the tech tree for 100% efficiency. This one has 5 triple-mounted 6-inch guns, 3 on the front and 2 on the back. And then it also has a bunch of 5-inch guns, 40mm and 20mm as well. These 152s do a lot of damage, and also they have a ridiculous fire rate of 10 rounds per minute. This means that you can just keep up a constant barrage against whatever you're shooting at. Yes, it's at 6.0, which can be a problem because you can face battle cruisers and mainly battleships, which you can't always do a ton of damage to, but you can just keep hitting them over and over again with whatever choice of round you feel like, and do, you know, a bunch of damage to them, and eventually they will pop. The Helena is fantastic. It's one of the best naval premiums in the game, and there's a reason why a bunch of people use it. It also has crazy high rewards as well. Then for coastal, you got the PT3. Don't bother with this. It's a waste of time. I don't want to even look at it really. Then you've also got the Carmi, another pretty much waste of time. 2 3-inch guns and 2 20mm. The 3-inch guns don't have a great fire rate. This thing doesn't have a lot of survivability. A lot of things with 20s and 40s will just chew you up, so there's no reason to use this over others. The PT-174 is a little bit better. It basically has a 40mm on the front and a bunch of torpedoes. That's all you really need to be successful at 2-3 in naval. So this thing can, you know, chuck torps and then use the Bofors and be very effective. So pretty good one this actually. If you want to get through the tech tree quickly to get to the banger 3.0 lineup which you'll find here. The Thunderbolt is part of that Banger 3.0 lineup. This is actually available in the Warbond shop right now, so picking it up from the Warbond shop is probably better to do. This has a quad 20 on the back of it, so you can fire torpedoes at something, turn tail, and then quad 20, whatever you're looking at, and it's really useful. It's one of the go-to vehicles for me when it comes to events, and can be incredibly effective in dealing with other vehicles. Then you have the Dougie. So the Dougie, or the Douglas, is one of the only vehicles that actually has missiles in Naval. There's this and then the Saetta for the Italians. These missiles are insanely good. I don't know, there you go. So they're Saclos, and also they can go a crazy amount of distance. Basically anything that spawns in the air, the moment that you see it and you have the fire director and the tracking radar attached to it, basically you can just lock onto it and then just fire a missile and it'll die. It's pretty much as simple as that. You can just keep the air completely clean with the Douglas and do really well with it. It also has a 3-inch gun on the front, which is okay. You know, it's more of the auto-loaded one, so it can get a lot more shots off. But generally, it's a pretty decent vehicle overall. It is reliant on its missiles and obviously doing the whole you know, anti-air stuff, but you get a lot of pleasure out of using a vehicle like this. That's all the stuff for America, and finally the end of the series of videos. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Millie Draper, Juan the Panda, Nick R. Cupila, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie B. Young, Peter Grayling, Jerry Provolt, Bareen, Alan Hacker, Sem Arslan, Uncle Bean, Derek R., and Lafouche for supporting the channel.